Hello. Okay, cool. My father was a home builder in the Black Hills of South Dakota. So my early childhood memories are of picking up discarded nails for 1 penny apiece and making crude animals and structures and buildings from stolen concrete out of the mixer. So when he asked me what I wanted to do when I graduated from high school, it's no surprise. I thought about my love for art and math and for him and his buildings. And I said I want to be an architect. And I never looked back. As an intern, I skipped all redlining and grunt work and went straight to project management. I managed K-12, higher education, corporate, civic, working for clients like Bridgewater, Thomson Reuters. My path to healthcare was unexpected when the project manager of a large hospital in Minnesota fell ill. Leadership needed someone to take over, and all eyes turned to me. I don't know anything about healthcare, I told them. You don't need to know. As long as you can manage, as long as you can pull it all together, we'll teach you the rest. This launched a healthcare career for me, working nationally and internationally in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, Cairo, New York City, Westchester, for Stanford in California. I was in line to be the managing principal of one of the largest architecture firms, the San Francisco office, in the United States. So you have to ask, why am I standing here today at this mental health conference here at Yale? Well, I hit something hard, and it wasn't a midlife crisis. Yet today, research says that up to 75% of people in their late 20s and early 30s will experience it. Feelings of anxiety and disconnection, deep uncertainty about identity, career choice, and purpose. Today, it's known, it's recognized as the quarter-life crisis. Often, it's misdiagnosed as anxiety and depression, and as such, the treatment programs don't address those core issues of difficulties with life transitions, the feeling of being stuck and disconnected. My story is no different. Despite my success, that was me. It was back in a time when the world was shaking. The Twin Towers had just fallen. HIV was on the rise. People were dying of AIDS. And I got sick. The quarter-life crisis is predictable. Often, when we're children, we take our stories, we create stories, often unresolved and unexamined from trauma and loss, and then we unknowingly nurture those stories over time, and we start to believe them, and we start to build our identity from them, our whole personality from them. And then we make choices. We make choices to satisfy what our parents want, what we think we want, what society says we should want. And we end up in a place we never imagined or ever wanted to be. That was me. I remember the day I learned that I was broken and unlovable. When my mother said, "Your father has asked for a divorce. He doesn't love us anymore." I was 7. My father was my rock. He was everything to me, and he didn't love me anymore because I did something wrong. I was broken. Fortunately, my mother remarried a new father to love me, somebody to make me whole. I was going to be okay, but that's not what happened. Sometimes at night I would crawl in bed between them just to feel safe. One such night, he would pull me close, leaving me more confused about fathers and love and touch. That night, I learned that touch was love. The next day, wanting to feel loved, I lifted up my shirt to show him my budding breast, and he poked it. And to make matters worse, my sister was sitting in the next room, saw the whole thing. "Holly, what are you doing? That's disgusting." So all of a sudden, I wasn't just broken and unlovable, I was disgusting and shameful. These are the stories and beliefs that I created my life on. These are the patterns that I built my world around. At 23, I married someone as messed up as I was, and we went to work creating the perfect life, because isn't that what you're supposed to do? To hide your flaws, to hide the things that you don't want to look at yourself or show others. Handsome husband, beautiful home, 2 lovely children, nice friends, great cars, down to our pets, Alfredo and fettuccine. People were envious of what we had. On the outside, we looked perfect. We had it all. On the inside, I woke up every day feeling anxious and worthless and shameful. Then around in my early 30s, my husband suggested that maybe I didn't get enough sexual experience before we got married and suggested I have some extracurricular activities to see how good I had it. I didn't flinch. I didn't object. I thought touch was love, someone else to love me. I didn't have the self-worth to say what the hell or the self-respect to protect myself when I did it. And I did it. And I got sick for a long time. And I got scared. What if I'm positive? I thought. In those days, you had to wait 2 weeks to get a test result. And you didn't go to your doctor. You went to an out-of-the-way clinic where no one knew you. Those 2 weeks were the darkest of my life. And it wasn't the question that have I dealt myself a death sentence that kept me up at night. What really sent chills down my spine and rocked me to the core was this question. What will my children say when they're old enough to understand what happened? You had to go into the office to get the results. They put you in a consult room in case the news was bad. And I remember sitting there when the nurse walked in with that envelope that held my future or not in it. And she sat down and she opened it. Are you ready for this? She said. Negative. That moment changed my life. I immediately bolted out of a mutually manipulative and controlling marriage into an 8-year battle to stay in the lives of my children, to prevent my alienation from them. Often, after a court case or a police episode or the apartment being ransacked, I would fall to pieces on the floor when the kids were away. But every time I picked myself up, I saw myself differently because I had to look for better. And in keeping that vow I made, I started getting answers. My journey would take me through neuroscience, psychology, Buddhism, and spirituality. It would take me from my hometown in the Black Hills of South Dakota to Minneapolis, where I took John Kabat-Zinn's 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course, and I checked out Zen Buddhism. Later, I would move to the greater New York City area, where I practiced under the new Kadampa tradition. It was the kindness and compassion of the Buddhist teachings that brought me to it. But like with my career, I quickly went to the top of the studies in a 2-year book study on the new heart of wisdom, on emptiness, on the emptiness of the universe, on the expansiveness of the mind, on the formlessness of form. Something was starting to gel. Hold the phone. What if the mind is not solid? What if suffering is not a fixed truth, but a mental construct from these stories and habits? What if it's in the space between thoughts, or dare I say, in absence of them, that freedom begins? And it wasn't just Buddhism that pointed to this. Quantum physics says it echoed that same openness. At the subatomic level, the world is not solid, but fields of vibration and probabilities. And I get that the debate is still out on what that means, but when it put it alongside the Buddhist teachings, it makes sense. Quarks and leptons 10,000 times smaller than protons and neutrons, with no fixed size or structure, just wavelets waiting to take form. Mindfulness itself invites us to rest in that open awareness, and as the observer, witness what arises before we identify with it. So in my early 40s, I knew I would have something to say. So I put 2 intentions out to the world. The first was to retire from architecture before I turned 50 And the second was to have the time and space to write about what I was learning. Because as an architect, my job was to take the millions of pieces and work with the thousands of systems and the hundreds of consultants and dozens of in-house staff to create a set of documents that complex structures could be built from. I wanted to bring that same clarity to the mind, how it works, why we suffer, and how you can change it. At age 49, I once again packed up everything I had, left everyone I knew, to move across the country and live in a Dharma house in San Francisco. And 2 days before I turned 50, I sat down to write. But I wasn't quite there yet. Something was missing. It's one thing to get glimpses of this quiet wisdom beyond thought, to understand the expansiveness of the mind, and to see that science is starting to catch up. It's another thing entirely to access it. So, how do we get from stuck and directionless to that place beyond fear where you can make choices about your life with confidence and clarity? Well, that's where mindfulness comes in, paying attention, of course. But for me, what was so helpful was understanding a few basics about how the mind works. Take these 7 little words, often attributed to Canadian neuropsychologist Donald Hemp. Nerve cells that fire together, wire together. Hemp, way back in 1949, introduced this concept, which is now fundamental to both neuroscience and psychology. When 2 neurons fire together repeatedly, the connection between them strengthens. This is how the mind learns. This is how habits are formed. Nerve cells that fire together, wire together. But typically this is how it goes down. You've got tens of thousands of thoughts a day. Most of them are negative. Almost all of them repeat. Along with the millions of bits of information that your brain takes in every second, you can only hold and examine a very small part of that. The rest of it all gets filed in your subconscious, your mental warehouse. And if you're not paying attention, your brain starts running on whatever it finds there, whatever stories and beliefs, however outdated and however untrue. This is where suffering begins, lost in the unexamined, stuck in this neuronet of regret about the past and worrying about the future, making choices through the lens of those experiences, creating your life from what you can see from there. The path to clarity, unraveling that net. Resting in open awareness. Because you can change your mind. You can alter the connections. You can change the program in your biocomputer. The Harvard-affiliated study done at Massachusetts General Hospital showed that in that 8 weeks of Jon Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction course, not only saw an increase in the gray matter in the hippocampus, the area of the brain associated with memory and learning, but a decrease in the amygdala, the area of the brain that's the alarm center. Because guess what? Neurons that no longer fire together no longer wire together. Old pathways weaken and new ones form when you show up with intention and awareness. So, to have agency before, during, or crawling your way out of the quarter-life crisis, here are 3 things that everyone should know. Everyone should be familiar with. Everyone should have it in the back of their mind about how your mind works. The first is that the mind is habit-based. Anything you think of over and over and over again will become part of your conditioning, will become part of who you are. But you are not your thoughts. You're in charge of them. So you can choose what you think about. If there's something you want in your life, there's something you want to be a part of who you are, listen to it, practice it, repeat it over and over and over again. Have some say in your neuroconnections. And it's important to have say in your neuroconnections because the second thing you're going to want to know is that the mind does not discriminate between good and bad conditioning. It doesn't care. It doesn't ask you, hey, is this a good idea? Should we be doing this? Is this even true? It's just a black box collecting habits and patterns and stories. But here's the truth. You can question it. You should question it. You should get off autopilot. Just because you think it, most of the time doesn't make it true. Just because it comes up again and again and again, it doesn't mean it should be a guide for your life. But let me warn you, when you start to question it, you will meet with resistance. That's why change is so hard. Because 3, the mind resists change. It's designed to keep you safe, and it does so by keeping the familiar in place. Any new ideas must pass through what I've heard appropriately called laws of transformation. And if they don't meet your current conditioning, they're often altered or discarded. But awareness changes everything. In the studies it showed that mindfulness not only decreases the amygdala, right, which is always present, always and looking for danger, always ready to send you all kinds of negative thoughts and ideas and pains, anything to stop you at the hint of change. It also increases the gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain associated with self-regulation and decision-making. But it doesn't have an autopilot, so you must engage. Okay, so when we were all sequestered in our homes, I printed out a book proposal for a manuscript I'm working on, and looking over at the pages, I could see it. It was like the lights came on. A veil was lifted. I could see a straightforward set of mindfulness and meditation practices based on that 20-year circuitous route I had just taken. The mind is habit-based, so let's pledge to make a habit of watching the mind. Let's pledge to pay attention 1 minute, 6 times a day. 1 minute, 6 times a day, you take a deep breath, and for 60 seconds you just watch without judgment and with curiosity. And if you do that over and over and over again, it'll start becoming second nature. It'll start to happen automatically. And one day you'll notice, wow, I see my thoughts, instead of always making choices from them. And when you see them, you can then evaluate them, look at them, question them, recognize them as they show up in your daily life. There's a moment when it first shows up. If you catch it, you can look at it. Is this helpful? Is this even true? Is this bringing me to where I want to be? And if not, you can let it go. You can start to unravel those old patterns. And in doing so, you can locate the space in between those thoughts, right? The clear, peaceful space that's more expandable than you might think. And with that, open your heart using your power of imagination. Open, open, open to that amazing flow of unconditional love, universal compassion, and infinite wisdom that surrounds you in the stillness. Then you invest in what you find there, that wisdom, that understanding. You listen with respect and stillness to so much it has to teach you. But also invest in the obstacles in your life. Anything that shows up is showing you what's still in your neural net, what you're hitting up against, showing you whatever you need to set yourself free. And finally, to expand beyond your conditioned limits, to make choices from a place of freedom and openness and clarity. These practices I call Per Love are a blueprint from the stuck and isolated to as far as you want to go. So yes, I retired from a prominent position in architecture to teach these practices because the mind is so powerful. And if you're not paying attention, it's running you. Mindfulness should be at the core of elementary school, core curriculum at elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and beyond, because knowing these things about how your mind works puts you in such a much better position when you get in your 20s and 30s and 40s and beyond. It's It's an agency that's accessible and free no matter your age, race, or zip code. When I teach it to students, when I look in their eyes, I see the light come on. And when I show them in workshops how their mind works, I get feedback like, I will forever remember how this made me feel. I am more than this. So it was worth it. So thank you to Yale for having me here today. Please pay attention to the world you're creating, and may all living beings be free from suffering. I'm Holly McNeill, the Mindfulness Architect. Thank you.